Funny thing about warnings, no one really listens until it's too late. Not because they can't hear. Oh no, they hear just fine. They just choose not to. You show them the edge, they still dance. You show them the fire, they still touch it, and then they scream when they burn. It's always the same. People think losses only come wrapped in death or betrayal. But sometimes the biggest losses walk out quietly, no drama, no exit music, just gone. And you're left staring at an empty seat that used to hold a miracle. And that's when the silence starts talking. Loud. Real loud. All right, let's dance with the truth. You ever notice how people only look up when the sky's falling, when the sirens wail, when the cracks spread in their perfect little plans? That's when they suddenly remember the heavens exist. But the whispers, the soft nudges, the tiny warnings, ignored, tossed aside like receipts from a bad decision. You see, when something sacred gives you a nudge, maybe it's a gut feeling, maybe it's that silence that suddenly feels too loud, it isn't casual. It's not your average Monday morning intuition. It's the kind of thing that doesn't scream because it doesn't need to. The protection is already there. The cover's already been paid for. But keep ignoring it, and that shield, it folds quietly, like a bodyguard who no longer steps in front of the bullet. People don't realize that when they're protected, they move different. They walk like the world owes them safety, like every risk will be caught, like the invisible hands will always catch them mid-fall. But that's the trick. That's the setup. The shield only stays where it's respected. The moment you act like you're invincible by your own merit, the moment you spit on the reason you're still breathing, still waking up to a roof, to breath, to balance, that's when the slow retreat begins, and no one notices. Not at first. The favor doesn't vanish with fireworks. It fades. Like a dying signal, like a friend backing away into a crowd. One decision at a time. And while you're laughing it off, convincing yourself that it's not that deep, the walls are thinning. You don't feel it yet, but soon you will. The protection doesn't leave you exposed overnight, it just doesn't intervene the same way anymore. You say something foolish, and for the first time there are consequences. You step somewhere dangerous, and the fall actually hurts this time. You used to slip and bounce back. Now you slip, and something breaks. That's not life being cruel. That's life showing you what happens when you mute the warning. You ever lose someone important, not because of some grand betrayal, but because you just stopped listening? You assumed they'd always be there, always shielding, always defending, and one day they weren't. And you think they abandoned me, but really you were the first to walk away. It's the same thing here. Ignore enough signs and even the divine gets quiet. Not because it's petty, but because permission is sacred. It won't force its way into deaf ears. See, people want miracles on demand. They want the covering, the victory, the breakthrough, but without the discipline. They want angels to fight for them while they flirt with fire. They want blessings without obedience. But the heavens don't do contracts with fools. You miss enough signs and the guards take a step back. You'll still be standing for a while, but the covering won't move when you do. And that's when it happens. Life hits, and suddenly you're not protected the way you used to be. Now you're sitting there wondering why everything feels off, why the peace is gone, why the doors are closing, the favor feels delayed, the chaos got louder, and you think it's just a rough patch. But no. That's the silence of absence. That's what it sounds like when the ones sent to protect you have turned their backs. Not out of spite, but because you kept turning yours first. You forgot who sent them, forgot what they were shielding you from. You stopped checking in, stopped aligning. And the cost, it creeps in. It's not loud. That's the thing. It's not a dramatic exit. It's not a thunderclap or a lightning strike. It's a stillness, a gap, a subtle shift. And by the time you notice, the hedge has holes. The wall is crumbling, and all the things you used to be shielded from, now they're waiting at your doorstep, licking their lips, because you weren't just covered by coincidence, you were being defended. And when you ignored the instructions, you gave up the defense. They warned you, they whispered, they nudged, but you wanted signs in neon. You wanted confirmation that fit your mood. And when it didn't come wrapped in the aesthetic you liked, you labeled it fake or dramatic or relevant. But now you're noticing, now that it's quiet, now that you're walking exposed, praying for what you once rejected. You want the protection back, but can you even hear the instruction this time? Or are you still scrolling, still dodging, still pretending the loss isn't real? Keep ignoring the divine, and even the mightiest will stop showing up to fight your battles, not because they stopped caring, but because you stopped listening. They say patience is a virtue, but what they don't tell you is how people treat you while you wait. See, everyone loves the result, the applause, the finish line, the golden confetti raining from some imaginary ceiling, but nobody talks about the in-between, the part where your voice gets hoarse from praying, where the silence is so thick it starts to echo, that uncomfortable middle chapter where you're not where you were, but you're definitely not where you're going. That's where people laugh. That's where they whisper. That's where they roll their eyes behind your back and say things like still at it, or maybe it's not meant for you. But you smile, you nod, you don't blink, because deep down you know the joke's on them. They don't see the blueprint. They weren't shown the vision. So of course they mock what they don't understand. See, it's easy to ridicule what hasn't bloomed yet. It's easy to doubt the seed when it's still in the dirt. They forget the dark is where things grow. They forget silence is where power builds. They look at you and they don't see movement, so they assume you're stuck. But oh, if only they could hear the rumble beneath the surface. If only they could see the shaking inside your bones. You're not stuck. You're charging. You're not lost. You're learning. But they won't get it until it's too late. Until the lights come on and they see you standing taller than their laughter ever reached. Let them laugh. Let them point. Let them make your waiting room their stage for cheap entertainment. That's what small minds do. They perform for each other. They mock process. They disrespect timing, because to them delay means denial. If it doesn't happen quick, it must not happen at all. But you know better. You understand that diamonds don't form in 5 minutes, that storms don't pass with a snap, that empires are not built in a weekend. You've learned to sit in the fire and not scream. You've mastered the art of bleeding quietly, of smiling through the ache, because you know what's coming. And it's bigger than their opinions, louder than their sarcasm, heavier than their doubt. It's wild how people can watch you suffer and still joke, how they can see your scars and treat them like punchlines. They don't realize they're laughing at their own limitations, because it takes guts to keep going. It takes madness to keep believing in the dark. It takes delusion to smile when nothing's working. And that kind of strength, it scares them, so they mock it, because it's easier to laugh than to admit they gave up long ago. It's easier to judge your chapter 2 when they quit in their prologue. Did you ever notice how quiet they get when the tables turn? When the thing they mocked becomes the very thing they chase? When the one they laughed at becomes the one they're quoting? Oh yes. Suddenly your silence looks wise. Suddenly your patience looks powerful. But by then it's already too late for them to understand. Because the thing about grace is, it builds slow. It moves in shadows. It doesn't flex. It prepares. And while they were busy being loud, grace was being precise. Let them have their jokes. Let them talk. Their voices won't echo where you're going. Their laughter won't matter in the palace. You've been through too much to flinch now. You've lost too much to care about their volume. What they don't know is every day you waited was a weapon being forged. Every second you kept going was a sword being sharpened. You've been getting ready, quietly, violently. And when your moment comes, they'll remember the way they laughed. They'll remember how they rolled their eyes. And they'll look down, realizing they laughed at someone who had the nerve to believe when nothing made sense. See, the problem is they think delay means dead. They think if it's taking time, it's not real. But real things are tested. Real things are refined. Real things come through fire, not filters. You're not just waiting, you're becoming. And when you arrive, there will be no need to explain. No need to clap back. The result will speak. The glow will scream. And they'll know without a word from you that the joke was never on you. It was always on them. Ever watch people pretend they care while secretly hoping you fail? Oh, it's an art form. The smiles that stretch just a little too wide. The compliments wrapped in poison. The "I'm happy for you" that tastes like vinegar when they say it. They're not rooting for you, they're rooting for your collapse. They just want front row seats. And when you walk in the room with your dreams still breathing, they flinch. Not because you're loud, but because you're still standing, still trying. And that's terrifying to them. Because your persistence exposes their surrender. You remind them of what they gave up on, of who they could have been. And people don't like mirrors that talk back. They'll call you crazy for seeing what isn't there yet. They'll scoff at your vision as if the world was built by people who played it safe. They forget every skyscraper started in someone's imagination. Every revolution started with someone everyone called insane. And when you say, "I believe," their laughter gets louder, not because you're wrong, but because you're right. And they're scared of that. Scared that you might be proof that faith still works. That boldness still builds. That maybe, just maybe, they were wrong to fold so early. They like you better quiet. They prefer you confused, comfortable, tamed. But oh, the second you start speaking with fire in your voice and stars in your chest, they panic. Because now you're dangerous. Now you're moving. And movement, that threatens everything they swore would never shift. You become a problem, not because you're loud, but because you're not playing dead anymore. You're done shrinking, done apologizing. You walk into rooms now and your presence dares the atmosphere to adjust. They try to pull you back with guilt, with rules, with reality. But reality is just consensus, and you never sign their contract. You're not here to repeat history, you're here to rewrite it, to tear out the pages that didn't serve you and scrawl your name across the margins like it's a declaration of war. Because it is. War against the doubt that tried to own you. War against the fear that built cages around your ambition. War against every voice, internal or external, that told you not you. Especially them. The ones who say it's soft, say it's subtle. They slip it into conversations like venom in wine. People don't like when you change without their permission, when you grow past the box they buried you in. They throw your past at you like it's a collar meant to leash you. They'll remind you who you were because who you're becoming gives them nightmares. But let them remember, let them whisper, because while they're busy clinging to your history, you're making new headlines. And they won't be able to keep up. You've outgrown their version of you. And that burns. Oh, how it burns. They'll test you, provoke you, try to bait you into defending the very thing you were born to do. Don't waste breath explaining a blueprint they were never supposed to see. Some things are revealed by fire, not dialogue. So walk tall. Let your silence thunder. Let your moves confuse them. And when they ask what you're doing, just smile. Not because you owe them answers, but because they won't understand them anyway. They're not tuned into your frequency. You're playing symphonies and they're stuck humming lullaby. They think you're supposed to fail. That's the part that excites them. Your collapse validates their comfort. If you can't make it, they feel better about never trying. Your detour is their bedtime story. Your crash is their lullaby. But when you don't fall, when you rise instead, when you defy the script they wrote behind your back, that's when their world cracks. Because now you're living proof that it can be done, that it's still possible, that grit outlasts gossip, that fire wins over fog. So keep going, not to prove them wrong, but to prove you were always right to believe, because deep down you've always known. You weren't born to blend in. You weren't made to bow. You're not the echo. You're the original sound. And while they play it safe in the shadows, you were built for the spotlight, whether they like it or not. They all say time heals everything, don't they? Like pain is some polite guest that packs its bags and leaves after a few days. But what they don't tell you is sometimes time doesn't heal, it hides, buries, wraps the wound in smiles and handshakes and polite, I'm fine. And deep down the rot continues, a slow leak in the soul. It shows up in the little ways, the silent. You don't move the same. Don't trust the same. Because what broke you didn't just break bones. It cracked your compass. Now you second guess your direction, your worth, your place in a world that clapped when you stood up and whispered when you fell. They told you just be patient, as if waiting was a cure, as if patience isn't sometimes just another word for slow death. You sat in rooms filled with people, yet felt like the only one not breathing. You danced to music you didn't hear, smiled at jokes you didn't feel, and all the while you screamed inside a shell, too scared to shatter. But here's the twist. No one noticed. No one ever really notices until the explosion, until the calm one becomes chaos, until the silent one starts laughing too loud. That's when they look. That's when they care. Not when you're dying quietly, but when you bleed publicly. They say you've changed, like change is betrayal, like evolution is a crime. You didn't change, you survived. There's a difference. You became the weapon they tried to dull. You stopped apologizing for the fire in your chest and the storms in your head. And now that you roar instead of whisper, they call you too much. Funny how they only loved the version of you that begged for their validation. But the moment you stopped shrinking to fit their comfort zones, suddenly you're the victim. Good, every story needs one. You ever notice how they love to tell you what's impossible, not because they've tried, but because they're too scared to? Their doubts are not prophecies, they're projections. They see your ambition and it exposes their fear. They hear your dreams and it reminds them of their failures. So they try to clip your wings before you fly too high, not out of concern but control, because if you actually make it, if you actually win, then what does that say about them? That they had the same 24 hours, the same sky, the same chance, and chose comfort? They mock what they don't understand, laugh at what they fear, but deep down they see it. That madness in your eyes, that refusal to fold, that quiet rage that says, I'll keep going even if it kills me. You're dangerous because you've been to the edge, and instead of falling, you built a house there. You made peace with pain. You learned to turn heartbreak into battle cries and scars into strategies. They can't figure you out. And that makes you unpredictable. And unpredictable is uncontrollable. They tried to make you like them, tame, predictable, small. But they didn't realize you're the type to set fire to the box they tried to put you in. You don't fit because you weren't made to. You were never meant to follow their maps. You were born to draw your own. And the ink, it's made of everything they said would break you. Every no, every door slammed, every betrayal, every loss, every tear cried in silence. That's your ink now, and with it you write truth. The truth is, they never really wanted you to rise. They wanted you to perform, to entertain, to obey. But rise? No. Rising is inconvenient. It forces them to look up, to look within. And people don't like mirrors that shout, so they call you arrogant, dramatic, crazy, but you wear those labels like medals. Because if being real, being raw, being relentless makes you the villain in their fairy tale, then let them write the story. Just make sure you're the part they'll never forget. You weren't supposed to make it this far, were you? You were supposed to quit, to crumble, to conform, but instead, you decided to burn. Not out, but brighter. You walk through fire like it's your living room, and pain is just the price of admission to your next evolution. They thought they buried you, but they didn't know you were a seed. And now every root is a middle finger to the doubt they sold you in the name of love. Every leaf a lesson they couldn't teach because they never learned it themselves. You grew anyway. You bled and bloomed anyway. And now they have to watch, stunned, as the thing they tried to break becomes the very thing they wish they could become. Oh, they all love to talk about effort, don't they? Work hard and you'll make it. That's the sweet little lullaby they feed to the masses, as if effort alone writes the checks, opens the doors, breaks the chains. You try and try and try until your knuckles bleed and your breath's a whisper, and what do you get? A pat on the back if you're lucky. More often you get silence. Because effort without proof is invisible. No one claps for the sweating man in the shadows. They only cheer when you shine, not when you're buried under the weight of your dreams, clawing your way through the concrete with fingernails. And then there's this myth of fairness, that if you give your all, the universe will give it back, but the universe doesn't do trades. It does chaos, it does timing, it does randomness in a top hat laughing at your plans. You think just because you want something badly enough, it'll show up wrapped in a bow? No. Life doesn't owe you applause because you showed up early and stayed late. Sometimes it gives the win to the lazy one, the liar, the faker, the one with the better smile and fewer morals, and you're left clenching your teeth, nodding politely, pretending you're not burning from the inside out. But here's the real trick, the real magic they don't talk about. It's not just about effort, it's about perception. You can run faster, work harder, grind longer, but if no one sees you bleeding, they'll assume you're clean. They'll think you had it easy. They'll call it luck, and you'll want to scream, "Do you have any idea what it took for me to even stand here?" But you don't scream, you swallow, you smile. You play the game, because showing the pain makes people uncomfortable. And uncomfortable people don't clap. They retreat. They question. They turn you into a cautionary tale. You want the truth? Effort is a lonely road. There are no billboards, no maps, no milestones. Just you and the echo of your own footsteps, wondering if anyone will ever notice. And sometimes they won't. Sometimes you'll reach the finish line and no one will be there, not a soul, and you'll stand there breathless, victorious, and painfully alone. Because the world only sees the result. It never sees the war. It doesn't care how many nights you didn't sleep, how many tears stained your pillow, how many times you were told to quit. It only cares if you won. Not how. But there's something savage, something pure in putting in the work even when no one's watching. When you grind in the dark knowing there's no guarantee. When you hustle not for applause but because your soul has claws and your bones itch with purpose. That's the kind of effort that makes monsters out of men. That's the kind that doesn't ask for permission or approval. It just moves. Relentlessly, obsessively, like a fire that doesn't know how to go out. And don't think for a second they won't try to belittle it. When you do make it, they'll say you change. They'll say it was easy for you. Convenient memory loss. They forget how they ignored you, how they doubted you, how they laughed behind your back when you said you were going to be different. But now they want to sit next to you, get close to the flame without burning. But you remember every no, every door slammed, every fake smile, every little moment that screamed, you don't belong here. That's what effort buys you. Memory. Steel-forged recall of the pain that built you. And if you fall, oh, if you fall, they come back like vultures. We knew it. He tried too hard, she should have known better. Because effort, when it fails, is comedy to the comfortable. They sit in their chairs and sip their drinks and joke about your collapse like they've earned the right to laugh. But they never even stepped on the field. They never bled, never broke, never even risked losing. And yet they act like critics of a performance they didn't buy a ticket for. So you keep going. Not because the world sees, not because it claps, but because there's something twistedly beautiful in trying anyway. In waking up, even when yesterday nearly killed you. In showing up with bruises and broken pieces and saying, let's go again. That's effort, not the shiny, polished version. The ugly, raw, screaming kind, the kind that terrifies mediocrity. The kind they'll never understand until it's too late, until they look up and see you towering over everything they thought was impossible.